Hi everybody, Professor King here. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the visual map. This is something that I created to help students kind of outline or plan for or organize their thoughts for their essay into something coherent. Now I want to explain a little bit about the visual map in that it's not that you have to always follow this exactly as it's laid out. Think of it more as like the fundamentals, right? As you go through your college career, you're going to become better and better and more experienced writers. This is me kind of teaching you the fundamentals. So I always like to use NBA analogies. If the end of your college career were the NBA, this is where I'm teaching you how to dribble and do layups, okay? That doesn't mean that you'll always do it this way. You'll always do it the same way. You'll find better ways that work for you. But this will allow you to know exactly what is required of an essay and where you can put it in order for it to make sense so that you have everything there. So if you're always kind of confused about structure, or if you've hit all the marks, or if you have all of the completed parts of an essay, this is going to help you know that is achievable, that's doable. So I'm going to switch this to a share screen so that you can see what this template looks like. It's also up on our class page as a file, as a Word document. So if you ever want to access it, it's right there. So let me just go to the visual map and I'll make it a larger page so that you can see exactly what I'm doing. I like to use this. I developed this when I was actually in grad school with a professor at Loyola Marymount University named Molly Youngkin. She kind of taught this format and demystified and kind of made tangible what we'd always been doing, but we'd never kind of been formally taught that that's what we were doing. So I kind of added a little bit of my own zhuzh to what she taught us, hence the visual map that you see before you. Some people absolutely love the visual map and they say it really helps them for their writing. Some people say it doesn't really help. So wherever you fall in that spectrum is totally fine, as long as you know that you have all of these elements in your essay. And I'll start by going through all of them. The first is the introductory paragraph. What I always tell people when they're drafting is you don't necessarily have to start with the intro. You don't have to start at the introduction when you are actually writing the essay, when you're doing your first draft. What's helpful for a lot of people is actually to start at the body paragraphs. And then once you have all of them kind of developed, the ideas for them developed, look them over, ask yourself what you're saying in your paragraphs and paragraphs, how you can summarize that into a sentence or two of an argument, and then that becomes the thesis in your intro. So even though you don't necessarily have to start your first draft with your intro, I'm going to start just for purposes of, chronology and order and it making sense. So the first thing you have is the background of the topic. What you'll notice that this does not say, it does not say hook. And I'm speaking to those of you who are, who've been taught day in and day out in every writing class you've ever had, that you have to have a hook for your writing. You're going to have to unlearn some of the earlier stuff that you learned. Just like eventually you might unlearn this for something a little more sophisticated. We're now unlearning the idea of the hook. People use hooks, and the reason why they tend to think hooks are helpful is because that idea of the hook grabbing the reader's attention, right? But hooks don't really say anything. They don't really add anything to your argument. They're just fluff. And at this level, what's so much more relevant, more important than a hook is that really compelling argument. The argument, the thesis statement, is where you need to be drawing people in, not with some, ridiculous, fluffy, like, did you ever wonder what climate change was all about, right? Because that doesn't really, again, it says nothing. So instead of a hook, you want to just have enough background information so that you and your reader are on the same page. Nothing that the reader already knows, right? Because that's kind of shared or common knowledge, but also not so much or so little that they either get bored or lost. It's really a balancing act, and really get rid of those frickin' hooks. The next one is the thesis statement. The thesis statement is your overall argument that answers the prompt. So always have the prompt in front of you when you are at any stage of the writing process, because that's what your thesis statement is doing, is it is directly and specifically answering that question, that prompt, okay? So always have the prompt in front of you, whether it's visually mapping, whether it's drafting, whether it's brainstorming, whether it's the final draft, so that you know that you are answering that question directly and thoroughly. Again, if it's hard for you, if you've always started at an introductory paragraph and then tried to write body paragraphs, if you're the kind of person who does that and then gets stuck and gets deer in the headlights, there's a reason for that. It's because you don't know what you're going to say until you say it. And so if it's easier for you to start at all the details, to put all of the body paragraphs together, start there. And then once you have all of them, again, ask yourself, what am I saying overall? And does that answer the prompt? If you've got to do a little zhuzhing accordingly, make sure you do that, and then say whatever that overall argument is in 1 to 2 sentences. Then we have our third part of the introductory paragraph, which is the plan, how you will prove your thesis, okay? So one way to think about this is to think about what is the overall claim you're making in each body paragraph. What's the sub-argument you're making in each one of your body paragraphs? And then all you have to do for your plan is list those, right? So for example, if my thesis statement is bubblegum ice cream is gross, right? And then I have discussed in great length in 3 body paragraphs that bubblegum ice cream is gross because of its synthetic flavor, because of the texture, the weird texture of the bubble gum versus the ice cream, and because I hate the color blue, right? Those would be my plan, right? Those are the things I'm going to talk about in greater depth when I get to the body paragraphs. So again, your best bet, if you're having trouble getting started, is to kind of start with your body paragraphs first, then list the summary of those claims here, then summarize even further into a greater argument here, right? You got to think of it kind of like a tree. I always use this analogy of a tree, and I'm the worst artist on the planet, so please bear with me, right? But if you think about, oh, this isn't even going to let me draw the way I want to draw. If you think about, is this gonna work? If this doesn't work, I guess I'll just have to do something else. Yeah, I'll just do something else. If you think about a tree, right? There's the root of the tree and the trunk of the tree. The trunk of the tree, the main part of it from whence everything else grows, that's your thesis statement. Then you start to branch off, and those branches are like the claims. They grow, they're still part of the trunk, but they're kind of smaller, more detailed, and growing, you know, into their own. Then what's on the branches are the green leaves. That's how you can see, right, that this is a tree. That is what makes vivid and colorful and detailed for you the elements of this tree. That's like your evidence. And then the little flowers or fruit that grow from those that make everything really beautiful and are kind of the whole reason why the tree is there in the first place, right? Are your purpose and analysis. So that'll take me to talking about your body paragraphs. So your body paragraphs, again, if we think of the thesis statement as kind of the trunk of the tree and we're starting to branch off, we have to think about what are the more detailed aspects of the argument that I'm going to dive into here. So your body paragraphs should contain one idea per body paragraph. And each of those ideas is not, you know, we've heard the term main idea or topic sentence or something like that. I want you to call it a claim. And here's why, excuse me, I would say to call it a claim, because a claim denotes argument, whereas an idea or topic sentence or something like that, that does not imply argument. Claim implies argument, which is what you need to be doing threaded throughout your essay is arguing, right? So in your body paragraph, each body paragraph is led by a claim. It's that first sub-argument that harkens back to your thesis statement, right? This harkens back to this. It's a more detailed expression of what you're saying overall here. Then you have evidence, right? Either in the form of text quotes, outside evidence in the sources you researched, data, statistics, etc., right? That supports the claim that's being made, okay? So this and this, right, these two, they need to go together. You can't have evidence that kind of goes off into left field from your claim. They all need to fit together. And then and here's the thing, here's the problem with most essays that I see at this level. Most students, when they write a body paragraph, they think you write one tiny little first sentence that they used to call the main idea or the topic sentence, and then you just bombard your reader with way too many pieces of evidence, right? In other words, you're too afraid to analyze yourselves, so you let other experts speak for you. And we want to get out of that habit. We want to show that we are critical thinkers, right? That we have the ability for critical thought. And so we have to think about why we are telling our audience what we're telling them, right? The claim is saying, here's how I feel. The evidence is, here's the proof. And then the third part, the purpose or analysis, is here is why I'm telling you. Here's what's at stake. Here's what's relevant or important, okay? This is the hardest part for any student at this level, explaining the why. And the best way to think about it is unlocking your inner 5-year-old. Some of you have kids, maybe younger siblings or nieces and nephews and stuff like that. If you know, and when they're really young, the thing that they always ask is why, right? Can we go to the store? No. Why? Well, because we're under quarantine. Why? Well, because an outbreak of a global pandemic, burst onto the scene back at the beginning of the year. Why? Because somebody ate a bat. Why? I don't know, because people want to eat weird animals for delicacies, right? Like, in other words, and what we've learned to do, not only with that niece, nephew, child, whatever, what we've learned to do is eventually, because it drives us insane, because we already know the answers, they don't, right? We go, because I said so, right? Like eventually that inner 5-year-old is silenced. And that silencing happens in all of us because we were all once 5 years old at one point, right? So now what I'm asking you to do is to reimagine and unlock that inner 5-year-old, because now we are encountering subject matter that is now brand new to us, that we've never considered before, or that we have very vague knowledge of. And so what we have to do, like that 5-year-old learning about, why we can't go to the grocery store, we have to say, okay, well, why does a person need to be a good person speaking well for the public good? Why is this person a good person speaking well for the public good? What do these qualities about this person show us that's so important about being a good person that's speaking well for the public good, right? That's where we are the 5-year-old. And we're so used to being silenced that we don't ever bring those things to the foreground, right? We forget to talk about why we're talking about things in the first place. And that's the muscle that we've really got to hone, right? That we've really got to build, is our why. And then in between paragraphs, make sure you're using transitions, either entire sentences or at least phrases, to let the reader know how these ideas are connected, right? You can start with like the fundamental, like first, second, third, but again, we want to start to challenge ourselves and see how our writing can flourish. So we'll do things like, one of the ways in which we see a good person speaking well is blah. And then maybe at the end of this body paragraph, we say like, you know, not only is it about not eating bubblegum ice cream that makes a person a good person speaking well, it's also being a huge Lakers fan or whatever it is, right? And then that'll segue us into the second paragraph, right? And this is where we present a new idea, but then in terms of the skills, we just do the same thing, claim, evidence, analysis. It's just a new claim, right? A new set of evidence and a new reason why it's important. And we keep doing that. We keep doing that until we get to the end of the essay. You may have more or fewer than 4 body paragraphs for this essay. I just put that in to make this a nice, clean, 2-sided worksheet that I usually hand out if it's an in-person class. So don't worry that it says 4 body paragraphs here. You may have more, may have less. It's totally fine. But you're doing that same thing for every body paragraph that you have. Then you get to the conclusion. And the conclusion does 2 things, right? Where every other paragraph in this essay does 3 things, the conclusion does 2. The conclusion wraps up and, and it leaves a lasting impression. So a lot of people, when they see conclusion, they think restate the thesis. And I'm going to tell you again right now, do not restate the thesis. Because here's why. If I told you, I hate bubblegum ice cream. I hate bubblegum ice cream because of the weird texture. I hate it because of the synthetic grossness of it. And I hate it because it's blue. That is why I hate bubblegum ice cream. It sounds like I'm going in a circle, right? What you want to do is you want to present your argument. You want to, in your body paragraphs, fully go through, what your whole argument is, how we see it play out, and why it's important. And then at the end, we don't just restate the thesis, because again, it would feel like we were going in a circle if we did that. We have to tell our readers where we've come since then, okay? And so what that allows us to do is to take all of these bits of analysis that we ended up with, right? And wrap that why this is important up at the end, if that makes sense. So you're not restating your thesis, you're telling us where you've come since then. I want you to think about it like two like octopus, like 3-legged octopus. I know you're squids. I don't know. I'm an English professor. I'm not a national geographer. Okay, so if you think about it, right, from your intro, if you think of my hand as like the thesis statement, then those body paragraph claims branch off from that thesis, right? Then in your conclusion, if this hand is my conclusion, these are the analysis that you got to, and everything in between is evidence, right? So think about that, right? Wrap up the analysis where you've come since then. And then if you're addicted to hooks, if you're a hook fanatic, and you're so sad that I said no hooks in the intro, leave it in the lasting impression. Leave that witty, fluff, cutesy, wootsy little saying. Leave the commentary, the rhetorical question, the interesting anecdote about your personal life. Save that for the lasting impression. Don't put it in the intro. Don't put it anywhere else in the essay, right? So, for those of you who love hooks, think of this as like an ending hook, right? This is where hooks should be, not in the beginning, because you want to 1-2 punch your reader with your killer argument. You want to knock them off their feet with a killer argument. You don't want to bore them to tears with another couple sentences of fluff that they've read a million times, right? You want to say, here's a killer argument. Boom, I'm arguing it all the way through. And then at the end, when you're, wrapping it up, you can say like, and that's why I, love Rocky Road ice cream, right? Or whatever. So if you need a hook, it goes in the lasting impression in the conclusion. So that's the visual map in its entirety. I hope that helps. I hope it explains kind of my rationale for creating this thing. If outlining is better for you, or if you have a system that, again, addresses all of these things and makes sure that they're complete and clear, do your thing. But one thing I'll say is another great part of the visual map is if you think that there's a part that's lacking or incomplete, you can use this as a note-taking tool to just plug in the ideas you have and then see where your blank spots are and know that you need to go from there. So it's also great for organization, for planning, for things like that. So I'll take it off share screen. So I hope this discussion of the visual map helped, particularly for Essay 1 that we'll be working on this week. So good luck. Again, message me if you have questions, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.